Gold-minded records, they're not your friends.
Welcome to Horror Headquarters, a weekly horror podcast. I'm your host, Klive Kraven, with my lovely co-host,
Naya Banks.
We are here to bring you the best in all things horror. News, reviews, updates, interactive polls, discussions, interviews, and more. Stay tuned and stick around as we take on the horror genre. From the rotting graves of zombies to the blood-soaked fangs of vampires. From the claws of the werewolf to the vision of the apparition. Prepare for the slaughter orders. This is Horror Headquarters. We're just dying to talk horror. What is good, people? This is Klive Kraven with my lovely co-host.
It's Naya.
That's right, and we are back with another episode of Horror Headquarters. This time, this is episode 3, and we're talking about the Cube Trilogy. Ooh. That's right. So this is actually a trilogy of trilogies. This is our third show, which also happens to be on another trilogy. The first two were trilogies as well. Episode 1 was on Reanimator Trilogy, Episode 2 on the Creepshow Trilogy, and now we're hitting you with the Cube Trilogy. So after this one, when we get into episode 4, we do have something a little bit different planned already. So make sure you tune in next week for episode 4. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have a lot to talk about here tonight. So we're going to go ahead and get into our first segment. If you need yourself a drink or some smoke and drinks or some smoke, drinks, and snacks, any combination thereof, get it all together. Do it now. Get yourself together. We will be back in just a second. This is Klive Kraven and
Naya Banks
reporting live from Horror Headquarters. Our news department is making a killing to bring you the latest
bone-breaking news.
Alright, we are back and we have your bone-breaking news for you, of course. And the first thing we have here on the docket is Halloween Returns. Now, this one's definitely got me interested because apparently John Carpenter is back to direct. Jamie Lee Curtis is back to, portray her role as Laurie Strode again. And there's some interesting gossip going on about this film. So they're saying that it's not exactly a remake. It is an alternate version of Halloween in another dimension. Which, alternate timeline, which is super strange to me. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a reboot of the franchise on a different timeline or a continuation. I haven't got any clarification on that, but it is definitely a twist in what I thought this was going to be. I was expecting it to be a sequel in the vein of, Halloween, H2O. But it wasn't exactly that. From what I'm reading, it's a little bit different. But nonetheless, I am interested in this, and I am excited for it. John Carpenter being one of my favorite directors. Pretty much my favorite director. This is just something that's definitely got me excited and amped up. And, I'm very excited about this one.
As am I. Twilight Zone. Great. Twilight Zone is coming back to CBS. No, not the original, but a reboot. Hosted by Jordan Peele.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's hosting, but I know that he's supposed to be helming this and being behind it, which I think is really interesting as well. He has recently shot into the horror world's fame with the movie Get Out that he recently put out and directed, which I thought was solid and definitely a great first entry. Yeah, definitely a great first entry for a horror film. And that is kind of his catapult into fame right now. In the horror world, so he is going to be, I guess, continuing with that, with doing reboot with the Twilight Zone. So I'm interested to see where they take this. The Twilight Zone's been rebooted several times, so it will be interesting to see what they do and the direction they take with it. I will be tuning in to at least check it out and give it a shot for sure. The next thing we have here is Herbert West Reanimator. So there's a new Lovecraft-inspired spin-off film coming that is not involving Jeffrey Combs and not from the same director, the same studios, or anything. Completely new film, a new idea, just based off the original Lovecraft novel, which we talked about that in episode 1, that this franchise was based off of Lovecraft's novels and short stories, which I did not know. Realized it was just a short story. I know that, it says H.P. Lovecraft's Reanimator on it, but I guess I never paid so much attention to it. So it was kind of interesting to get some of the backstory on that for sure. But definitely looking forward to that. I'm a Reanimator fan, so this film definitely has caught my interest.
Rise of the Living Dead, done by George Romero's son, Cameron Romero. He's doing an Origins film. That should be interesting.
So this is essentially, from what I've read, a prequel to Night of the Living Dead from '68, the original Night of the Living Dead film. Now, I'm definitely interested to see what they do with this and his take on it. I know a lot of people are worried about about Romero's legacy being tarnished, but if anybody's going to do a film, based off of Romero's films, I think his son would probably be one of the best to put, the faith in his hands to do it. So I am looking forward to this. This is definitely one that's on my list to watch. I believe there's artwork released for this as well. It definitely caught my eye. It's definitely something that I'm going to be keeping an eye out on. I just don't know. I don't know how well it's going to be done. I don't know the budget behind it, the studio behind it. I have seen, I believe, another film from Cameron, and I did like it. So who knows? Maybe it'll catch us off guard and be a real gem. But only time will tell. This is something definitely piquing my interest, though, and we will keep you updated on it as more unfolds. That pretty much wraps up our bone-breaking news segment. We're going to go ahead and keep it moving. We're going to get into our main part of the show. You guys already know what that is, so don't go nowhere. Go ahead and get yourself a snack if you need it. Go ahead and rush, run, drag your corpse to the bathroom if you have to. We will be here. And now, our headquarters presents your feature presentation, Vital Organs Discussion. Boom.
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 We are back. Okay, and we are hitting you with another segment. This is your Vital Organs Discussion. And we're going to go ahead and be talking about the Cube Trilogy right here. We're going to go ahead and get into some film series notes. These are little factoids about the series in general, not necessarily about specific films so much, but about the series as a whole. So, the world in which the Cube series is set is kept secret from the viewer of the films throughout. The first Cube in particular portrays nothing of the world in which the film is set, who is responsible for the Cube, or why the prisoners are there. Hints are, however, given throughout the second and third films, and the film's writer, Vincenzo Natali, apparently wrote a script detailing the world outside the Cube, but destroyed it after deciding not to create a movie about it. The plot, devices used in Hypercube and Cube Zero, Izon and the government, are likely not or only very loosely related to Natali's original idea.
Ooh.
So, basically, if you watch the films, you'll see that there's not a whole lot of information given on where they're at, why they're there, how they got there, and who put them there. It's very limited, and it's a mystery, and everybody's trying to figure that out and piece the pieces of this puzzle together.
Yeah.
And there's obviously very little clues and information to go off of other than what they know, and most of them seem to not know a lot about what happened to them or even how they got there. So it's a very mysterious type of film in that aspect, and there's definitely a lot of possibilities, and they go over that and talk about the possibilities of what could have happened, whether it was aliens or government or military or just some possibly rich motherfucker that's just messing with them, you know what I mean? So there was all types of different ideas alluded to, and they talked about, even like they said, showing the world outside of the Cube, but he destroyed that idea. The director got rid of that idea immediately when going back and looking at that and seeing it in the film. Now, I understand the aspect and the reason for doing that, and that's to keep mystery, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to keep mystery there, and they wanted to keep it, loose and kind of unknown. And I get that, but I do kind of wish we would have got to see the world and the place where the Cube was set and more info about them than what we got to see, even throughout the whole trilogy.
Yeah, I feel like they want you to use your imagination more so than just giving you the answer.
Yeah, they definitely want you to work for it. And like I said, I totally get that. I just feel like I wish that we would have got
some
more
type of answer.
Yeah, more like visual backing of where this was and who constructed it and all that. But yeah, you don't necessarily get that.
Whoops. The first film is especially most ominous about the outside world. There is no indication of where or when the cube was built, nor the timeline of it, although it is generally assumed to be present day. Although the main characters are presumably North Americans due to them speaking English with typical North American accents, there is no evidence of the cube built in the U.S. However, in the second film, a U.S. colonel displays knowledge of the first cube's existence and layout. Despite that, since the cube from the first film is actually a second cube due to the prequel third film, the colonel could either be talking about the very first cube from the prequel or this one.
So this kind of ties in with the first factoid that there's really no indication on where they are or how they got there, but there's obviously this colonel that is having knowledge of these cubes' existence. So the military is privy. So we are kind of given this information that there is some military kind of tie to these cubes, at least as far as what the audience and the viewer, us as the viewer, actually knows.
They know something. They just don't want you to know right away.
Yeah, and it's hinted that it's a government conspiracy type deal based on the conversations with the colonel. So the second film reveals that a company named Izon is responsible for the cube. Several exterior shots prove that it's set in present time. The cube's disturbing nature and the sheer impossibility of it being a physical construct, since it's technically an endless tesseract, makes the location ambiguous. Furthermore, Izon is a private company, but the presence of the aforementioned colonel and his knowledge of the cube suggests that the U.S. government is involved. So it's a company, actually, that is manufacturing in unison, typically, or likely, with the government. So this Izon company is likely a subcontractor for the government that has created this object, the cube, and is using it for some type of experiment, possibly, of some sort. So it's pretty interesting that fact is revealed, and they bring that to light. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. The third cube shows its personnel, consisting of management, known as the people upstairs, and technicians who operate the cube and oversee the people placed inside. All people trapped in the cube are death row inmates with their memories deleted and who willingly signed in to be placed inside instead of being executed. The cube appears to be operated by a repressive totalitarian government, likely to be the United States. At one point, when one technician finds no signature on a consent form from a woman trapped inside, it shows that the government also imprisons political opponents against their own will. Proven right when the technician finds her picture in a newspaper showing her in a political protest.
Yeah, so basically this kind of shows that they're willing to take people in and put them into this torture cube, essentially, without any reason, behind it, other than the fact of saying, well, we have people here that are consenting, that are on death row. Well, even people that aren't doing that, they're still putting in there, and it's because of political reasons and things of that nature. So yeah, that was revealed in the third film, and that was something that was, an interesting twist on things, and kind of gave you a little bit of reasons of why possibly even the first two were there from the original two films. So in March 2011, it was rumored that Lionsgate Films was considering an additional film in the series, tentatively titled Cube 3D. Unfortunately, nothing else has developed with this film. I would have liked to see another one, to be honest with you. I did enjoy all three of them, the trilogy as a whole. I think they could have gave a little bit more info on where they came from and things of that nature. I understand why they did limit it. I get that. I just feel like, I don't know, I just wish they would have dived into it more. I wish we could have seen a little bit more of that world and reasoning why and the company behind it and things of that, the Izon place and all that. But I get why they did it. Like I said earlier, it's just, me personally, I would have liked to see more of that world.
In April 2015, The Hollywood Reporter announced that Lionsgate Films planned to remake the original film under the title Cubed, with the ED, with Salman Khan as director.
So this is interesting, and I never even noticed that it was cubed and not cube. April 2015. That's only a couple years ago, 2 years ago. So this is semi-recent. This is very possible that this could be coming into fruition. It does take years to put together a film, so it's very possible that this one has just taken a while and there just hasn't been a lot of news to report on it. So I do hope this is still going through. I would like to see another film. Like I said, whether it's a sequel, a prequel, a remake, whatever, I would like to see another rendition of film done of Cube for sure, because I did enjoy it 100%. So that pretty much wraps up everything that we have here as far as the basic notes of this series. We do have more about the individual films themselves, so we're going to go ahead and get right into that. The first thing we're going to talk about is Cube from 1997, the first of 3 films in the trilogy. This is directed by Vincenzo Natali. I believe that's pronounced correctly. Hope that's pronounced correctly. So first little factoid about the original Cube film from the first one from the series is it was shot on a single 14-foot by 14-foot set made to look like many different cubes through the use of different colored panels. So they actually didn't use different rooms. It was just a lighting technique that they used to manipulate and make it look like a series of different rooms where they were shooting. So I thought this was absolutely a brilliant idea and very slick. And pretty wild, that they had to film all that on one set. I mean, that's pretty impressive. They did the whole thing in a single room for sure, and a very small room at that. A 14 by 14 set is not large at all.
And it's nice to know that it's something more simple than what I'd imagine them doing. I imagine the color film and them just putting it over white lights, making it color.
I think what they actually did is I think I read somewhere that they had these gel panels that they were using. But it took so long for them to do room to room that they ended up shooting the film by colors rather than in chronological order. They did all the red shots and all the green shots, all the white shots, because doing it in order of the film, they said it would have took too long because of having to change the color panels between every shot. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty wild.
Not only are the characters named after prisons, but they reflect the prisons themselves. Example, Kazan, the mentally challenged character in Russia, is a disorganized prison. Run, the mentor, was a jail that pioneered many of today's prison policies. Quentin, the detective, is known for its brutality. Holloway is a women's prison, and Alderson is a prison where isolation is a common punishment. Leavenworth runs to a rigid set of rules, Levin's mathematics, and the new prison is corporately owned and built, Worth hired as an architect.
So, yeah, this is really cool, and I didn't even notice this or pick up on this until after I read into it myself, that all these characters are legitimately named after real prisons, and like you said, they actually correspond with the type of prison that it is with the character's name. So that to me is really brilliant and a really cool little segue on the characters themselves, because obviously this is like them trying to break out of something like a prison. So using those as character names that relate to their personality, I thought was a really genius segue and really cool thing to have in there. So director Vincenzo Natali deleted a final moment from the film in which it's shown what is outside the cube. He said that when he was paring the film down in the editing room, it was the first thing that he removed.
Why, though?
Like I said, I think a big part of it comes down to the original idea behind the film is to have this mysterious cube with no logic and reasoning behind why it's there, and to keep that mystery there. And I think that was the goal ultimately, of why he even pulled that scene out specifically, of wanting to keep that mystery there and not even revealing it at the end. You know what I mean? So, in a way, it sucks, but in a way it's cool because it does keep it open to not know what was actually there. But damn, I would have loved to know what was there in the last few seconds.
The handles on all the hatches are industrial die holders used for cutting threads on rods and available at any hardware shop.
So yeah, basically the set itself was basically designed using basic
everyday tools, basically.
Yeah, die holders, basically, just to be the handles for this set. So I thought that was a pretty cool factoid that they were just using something like that on the set rather than having actual set designers build something. It was just something they won from the shop and bought and attached to the wall. So apparently this was the last movie to be released in Canada by Cineplex Odeon Films before they were absorbed into Alliance and changed to Odeon Films. So I'm not super familiar with Odeon or Cineplex, but I have heard of Alliance. So I thought that was pretty interesting that this was the last film to come out by this company. Was Cube. So what a farewell film. What a great film to be the last one, indeed.
I thought this was a cool fact. All the actors have appeared on the TV show Forever Night. So they basically all knew each other.
Yeah, and you know, I've never even heard of this show, honestly, before researching this, and I didn't do a whole lot of research into the show, so I'm not even sure what the format was, whether it was a comedy, a horror, what type of show it was, but that is cool that all these people had worked together previously before doing this film. Very cool indeed. So to show their support for the Toronto film industry, the special effects company Core, C-O-R-E, did the digital effects for free for this film. So that's super cool. What a great support of community and of the film community as well. To have the effects guys for this company do the effects on this film for free, which ended up being a great film, by the way, so hopefully they're happy with putting that work in towards it, and very cool to know that they did that.
Bravo yourself. Pat yourself on the back.
Pat.
Screams can easily be heard through closed doors, but the sound-activated room does not, quote-unquote, hear anything through a closed door when the conversation gets quite animated before they enter that room. Also, the sound of a car, which the human ear can hear from the inside of the sound-activated room, cannot trigger it either. Further, nobody checks the numbers of the room they go into from the sound-activated room.
So yeah, this is basically just a slip-up kind of in, not necessarily continuity, but in logic of the actual film itself. There would have been, activation of that room without even somebody being in it from the noise from the other room if it was truly sound activated. Mm-hmm. Now, possibly there was some other parameter set to that room that may have made it to where it had to be a certain decibel to activate it. That is possible. But yeah, that definitely was something that I noticed as well, that wouldn't it activate even if something, a noise came from another room. So I guess that's how they came to explain it. So when Kazan lowers himself into the blue sound-activated trap room, the set cube wobbles from left to right, enough to spoil the illusion, though only for about 2 seconds, that the cube is solid and inflexible metal. So basically, you get to see the set wobble and the walls wobble when he's being lowered down into that spot, which I believe is the scene with the the blue room. It's the blue sound activated room. So it's that room when he's coming down into it to check for the, to see what actually will trigger it. You can see the cube wobble, one of the walls.
It must have not wobbled that much because I didn't notice it.
Yeah, and I didn't actually notice it when I watched it, but if you do go back and look at it, you do see it move a little bit. So that's just a cool little factoid about that there. But that pretty much wraps up the facts that we have about the Cube film. Let's talk a little bit about this one now. So right off the break, this one starts with a very interesting dicing kill that was just fucking awesome to me, and we've seen similar kills like this in other horror movies, but I think this one just really nailed it and made it look cool. And it just really set the tone for the film and caught my interest right away. And I'm glad that we looked into this one. This is one that I've actually been privy to for years. I just never had the chance to check it, and I'm really glad that I did get a chance to check it because it was enjoyable, it was really well done, and the sequels were fun as well, but this one really is the standout, I think, the original one, the first one.
It definitely had a lot of expected twists and turns you obviously didn't see coming. The kill, definitely.
There was the first kill, right off the break, I kind of had an idea that something was going to happen, but you don't necessarily always expect a kill that early into the movie, but they do give it to you, and it is brutal. But the film delivers on a lot of different levels. It has a very cool soundtrack. It has great lighting. It has good cinematography, interesting characters and backstories, and a lot of depth to it. So, Cube for me is definitely one that's enjoyable. The storyline is interesting, very interesting actually, and I would definitely recommend this one. If I was going to throw a rating on this one, I would probably give this one a good 7.75 to 8 out of 10. Just because I think that the concept is really original and creative, and like I said, all around it is pretty solid. It does have a few little flaws to it, but overall, I'm willing to look past those. I do think it is a solid watch, so 7.75 to 8 for me. What about you on this one?
I'm gonna have to give it a strong 8. The characters definitely stood out. I like Levin. I think that was her name, because I'm not good with math at all, but the way she got the numbers and the way she was able to figure out the patterns faster than I ever would. And then the math genius, he was the mentally challenged one. I think his name was Kazan. Yeah. And then, the way he was able to do numbers without even doing the math, which got your mind thinking, like, what could he have been before they erased their minds? Like, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely that mystery factor in there that you don't know really the past of any of these people, but those pasts are slowly brought to the forefront as the film goes on. With the Quentin guy, you can obviously see that he was abusive, likely to his wife and family, with how he treats the females and what he ends up doing later in the film and how he conducts himself. Then there's also with Renz, the main guy, you also see that he's a smart one and kind of is used to breaking out of prisons, and he's known for that. And, you know, that kind of shows in his personality. So you kind of get to see really who these people are a little bit through their personalities and through what is found out about them through the film going on. But, there's definitely some interesting characters in this film, particularly with, I would say, with Renz and with Quentin. Although with Renz, he's not in the film very long. I do like his character a lot, and I thought he was going to be in it a lot longer than he was. He ends up actually being, I think, like the second person in the film to go, so he does not stick around for long, but definitely interesting indeed. But yeah, overall, I definitely liked Cube and thought it was a good flick, so check that one out if you're into isolation type films and, you know, things with a nature to, like Saw or Circle or Exam, things of that nature, because it definitely fits that kind of vibe 100%. But we're going to keep it moving. We're going to talk about Cube 2, Hypercube from 2002. This is directed by Andres Sekula. So this one was pretty cool. We got some facts about this one before we actually get into our thoughts on this one, but the Mercury at the end of the movie was generated with the software Real Flow and Real Wave. So I'm assuming this is likely a more commercially available software that you can get that they use to generate the Mercury of the cube with during the film, which we've talked about having, you know, kind of shoddy CGI, not the greatest CGI in there, but I still think that the story of the film and the context of the film and the plot and all is enough to pull you away to not look at the CGI so much. But that was a cool little factoid that I thought I would mention, because I'm sure that Real Flow and Real Wave are likely more commercially available softwares to get.
While the characters are recalling the last thing they remember before being in the cube, Garrett Wynn Davies' character Simon states that he was in New Haven. When the screen divides into different views, the shot on the right upper side of the screen is an alternate take from another Lionsgate film Davies had a role in, American Psycho 2, All-American Girl from 2002. The similar shot in American Psycho 2 can be seen shortly after 1 hour, 6 minutes into that film.
So that's interesting. Now, I have actually seen the piece of shit that is called American Psycho 2. Now, we just revisited American Psycho recently, and you saw it for your first time and loved it.
I loved it.
Now, I told you about the second one with fucking William Shatner in it, and there's a chick, I think it's the chick that plays in That 70s Show. I can't remember, the dark-haired little chick that plays in That 70s Show, I think, is the one that plays the killer in this, and it's fucking ass. Like, it's totally fucking garbaggio. And yeah, so apparently there's a part from that movie, and I've seen that movie, but I do not remember that part that's in Hypercube. So yeah, I didn't even notice that shot, and I thought that was pretty interesting that was completely taken from another movie, yeah, and put in there and actually worked. I guess because it was the same character, but I didn't even notice a wardrobe change if there was one. I'm gonna have to go back and pay closer attention to that, but quite interesting. Anyway, there is an extended ending featured on the DVD, in which Kate is told that her total time in the cube was 6 minutes and 59 seconds. If you look at the other characters' wristwatches throughout the movie, it's always around 6. This works together with the numbers 60659 or 60659 as the time. So that's pretty wild. Like, you do see that number repeatedly. Remember, they keep showing that number written down and you know, on the watch and all that, and you see that number over and over again. And now they give meaning to it with talking about originally what was intended for this film, with having it revealed that she was only in there for 6 minutes and 59 seconds, which is a total mind fuck. Mm-hmm. When I read that, I thought that was a great little factoid, and it makes me want to get the DVD so I can see them talking about that extended ending. Yeah, I really want to see that extended ending, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to get that. I need to get my hands on this trilogy, as a matter of fact, just period, because all of them were fun, and I do want to get my hands on them for sure.
We need to do that, definitely.
Indeed.
When Colonel McGuire is killed, the effect of the wall of energy crashing into him is actually just created with a vacuum cleaner stuck on exhale to blow his clothes around, and CGI for the wall itself.
So, yeah, they just basically used an old school vacuum and CGI to do that effect. And that's cool to me, to use practical effects with CGI. I don't, typically have an issue when they mix. My issue seems to come from, them using pure CGI on things where practical effects would either do better or equally as good.
Yeah.
If you have the option there or the choice, it's better to stick with practical. And honestly, people will tell you CGI is actually a lot more expensive to do. Even though with practical you have to visually and physically create it, it's a lot more expensive typically to do the visual effects using computers. So I never really understood the logic behind CGI. Never really got that one. Anyway, moving on. When they find the dead scientist, Kate helps Sasha put her left foot on the ladder twice. So here's just a little continuity error. When they zoom in on her foot, putting on the ladder, like helping her up on the ladder, they do her left foot twice. So this bitch has 2 left feet.
Literally.
Yeah, like...
I didn't notice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you won't notice things like that, because I didn't even notice it either until I read it, but you won't notice shit like that, and that to me is cool. Little things like that, like continuity type things, sometimes they just don't stand out and they will slip by. So that was just a cool little small thing in there that was a continuity issue that they just bypassed.
When climbing from one cube to another, Kate's white blouse disappears to reveal a white shirt underneath. In the next shot and the rest of the movie, the blouse is back. So this is once again another continuity issue where you're seeing her have this shirt, and then boom, one shot is just completely gone, and then it's back. So we have basically a Harry Houdini shirt here appearing and disappearing. So once again, continuity issue. When they find the second watch and take a look behind to compare, the text is the same, but the serial number is not. Oh.
Yeah, so here is not only a continuity issue, but also a conflict even in the story, because this directly contradicts the fact of them saying it was a copy of the original watch. If the serial numbers are different, obviously it's not the same watch. So, yeah, that was something that I thought was pretty interesting.
Due to the shininess of the black doors, the camera is often mirrored in them and is visible on several occasions.
So, once again, we have another thing with not necessarily continuity, but with them goofing up and just bypassing something and not noticing that you can fucking see the camera in the paint.
Pay attention!
Bleh. But, yeah, so they bypassed this and made a mistake, and it's visible where the cameras are at certain times when they're showing the black paint on the doors of the vaults, into the cubes, into the rooms. Blah. So, the longer alternate ending included in the special features of the DVD reveals the owners to be the government. In the shorter version, it's unclear who they are, but it's assumed that they're Izon. Kate is executed in both versions, but she is praised for being the first operative to make it out alive. So, once again, we have this alternate ending with a longer version that I have not seen and did not know was in existence that I do want to see and get my hands on, so I will be interested in checking this out and getting my hands on a copy of this so I can check out these dope-ass features and see them for myself rather than read about them.
Boom. The original screenplay written by Sean Hood, which was subsequently rewritten by producer Ernie Barbarash. Wow, okay. Had a substantially different plot, theme, and characterization, as well as a set of over 70 production illustrations, which visualized quite different traps, environments, and four-dimensional concepts.
So, yeah, this is pretty cool. The original was, from what I read, very different, and not only the settings but also the time frame in which it was supposed to take place. I read earlier that in another draft that it was supposed to take place in the future, and then there was possibly another draft where it was going to take place during the 60s. So there was two very different scripts that were originally penned for this that came out not came out, but were written years in advance to the film actually being converted and directed into an actual feature-length film. So, very cool stuff indeed. That about wraps up the facts that we have for Cube 2. As far as the film itself, let's talk a little bit about this movie. Now, this one had a much more brutal take on the kills, I think, and showed maybe a little bit more backstory as well to the Cube itself, gave a little bit more of an insight. But it also had the shoddy CGI and some of the not so great acting. But you know, like I said, I'm very forgiving when it comes to shit like that. Like, things really have to suck for me to really shit on it and turn it down. So I was able to look past the shoddy CGI, but I do recognize that it was shoddy CGI. So not the greatest in visual effects, but overall, I think the story in this one's pretty cool. I like the characters in it for the most part. The old lady was a trip. The old lady was real wild.
Yeah.
But I do like how they tied everything together, and they had the alternate realities and shit and parallel universes going on. That was really cool. I do like some of the concepts they used in it. It's just, like I said, the CGI is, you know, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's definitely noticeably shoddy. But you got to look past that, and if you can look past that, it is a pretty cool flick, and it's definitely interesting indeed. So if I'm going to throw a rating on this film and, you know, really buckle down and hit it with something 1 out of 10 and be honest and not really based on the fact that I like it, if I'm really based and honest on everything, it's probably about a 5.5 to a 6. And that's being brutally honest. That's you know, taking away the fact that I like it, because me personally, I would probably rate it higher for my own liking, but if I'm rating it for its quality as a film, which I'm trying to do with these reviews, I don't necessarily rate things on whether I like it or not. It's more of what the honest rating of the film itself is as quality. So I would say a 5.5 to 6 for the quality on this one. Like I said, the acting in some parts is shoddy, and, you know, the CGI is pretty rough. And in comparison to the first one, it kind of pales a little bit as well. But I do feel the kills are a little bit more brutal. I do like the story. I had fun with the characters, and I was able to look past the CGI. So 5.5 out of 6 for me. What are you going to throw in this one?
I'm going to split it down the middle and go for just a straight 5. This movie was good, but the first one is always going to be better. Like, that's with any movie. But, like, there was some changes, like, it does, like, the cube itself changes, like, format and, like...
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit different in this one. I think with this one, you get more of the sense of the cube actually changing and, you know, constantly shifting and at a more rapid pace, and also even shifting like realities and all that. So parallel universes. So it's a lot different from the other one, the original one. It's definitely you know, a bit of a difference there, but it's the same concept of the people being trapped in a cube and trying to fight their way out. So I like this one. I enjoyed it. We both kind of split it down the middle with 5s and 6s roughly between us. So this one is definitely worth checking out. Not as good as the original, but definitely a worthy entry. And that about wraps up what we have for the second one. We're going to go ahead and take it into the last and the final film of this series, which is Cube Zero from 2004, directed by Ernie Barbarash, who we mentioned earlier from his screenplay, which was also done for Cube 2. So he comes through for Cube Zero, and he ends up being the director now. Cube Zero also is a prequel to the original films, which is important to mention, and this is not a sequel, although it is considered a sequel in the sequence that it was dropped because it came out after the original. However, it is a prequel film in chronological order. So, starting off, a little factoid on this one is the coffee mug on Wynn's desk says, "Think outside the box." It can be seen when he's drawing the picture of Rains. Yeah, so, yeah, it's a cheesy little joke, you know what I mean? It is cheesy, but I thought that was a really cool fact, and I didn't notice it myself, but when I read this, I did want to take note of it. I thought it was a really cool little factoid indeed.
Think outside the box, but you can't really think outside the box.
Because you can't get outside the box.
Ha! In the monitor room at the beginning of the movie, there is a blurred shot of a controller for an Atari 2600 as the CD of Rajkin's demise being collected.
Okay, so that name, they always have to throw in a fucking name that you can't pronounce.
Right.
But Rajkin, or Riken, or Raikiri, or Raikirian.
There's like a J in it that shouldn't even be in there.
Raikaligens. We're just going to butcher his name intentionally now just because they wanted to be a dick about it. But, yeah, that's pretty cool that they have a little homage to Atari in there. And I'm not really sure the significance of that to the film, but I guess the idea was, you know, this game, you know, this movie is considered almost a game. Like, they're playing with people's lives and they're filming it for entertainment. So maybe it's a homage to that. That was kind of my thought process behind it for that, but pretty interesting. When Rains, Haskell, and Meyerhold enter the cube with a dead body, Haskell suggests he's starved to death, with Rains replying, "God, I'm hungry." This is a reference to Cube 2 Hypercube from 2002, when a character complained of hunger and killed a fellow captive and ate him.
Nom, nom, nom.
So, nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. So this is really cool that there was a little homage and tip of the hat to something from an earlier Cube film, which is actually a later one technically, because this being released after is a prequel, so Cube 2. So yeah, it's like a flip-flop. It came out before but released after, so it's supposed to be that way. But that was a cool little nod to the hat to them by having that in there, and a very cool tip to the film that was a predecessor to it.
The ending sequence with Wynn as mentally handicapped is a direct reference from the original Cube in 1997. The lines are exactly the same, but the characters are different.
Yeah, now, this is pretty interesting, and I think I remember reading somewhere that the director said that he confirmed that the characters are not the same character, and intentionally, and you noticed that too, and you were like, "Oh, it's from the first from the first film."
I figured, like, I knew they were different characters, but I figured it was like a loop around.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and it definitely it ties them together, and I think it shows that they do something that kind of fucks with the mental of the people, and I think it's people specifically that work there. You know what I mean? Which makes sense, and it sheds light on how they deal with the people. They just put them in the cube if they're a problem, or if they want to branch off, or if they and worried about them talking, or whatever the reason may be. They could just simply put them in the cube to deal with the problem and put them through the process that makes them seem like they're mentally challenged. Yeah. So they can't even speak to people they do encounter in the cube in case somebody does actually get out. But even if they do get out, we've seen what happens to people if they get out. They get shot in their fucking face. So, what's the goal of getting out if you're just gonna get killed any fucking way?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's pretty interesting. The characters enter a room identifying it as room AZZ, yet earlier in the film we learned that the letters had been burned off to prevent identifying particular rooms.
Boom.
Yeah, so that's obviously once again something with continuity that they failed to work on. And that's not even necessarily continuity. That's once again like a blunder that kind of fucks up with the plot because it's physically impossible for them to read them if they've been burnt off. It's not just a continuity issue where something was in the other person's hand or something's a different color. That actually changes the logic and the situation of the actual story itself. So that's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. When Rains first meet Haskell, she spits on him. It is obvious that when she spits, the spit goes directly onto the floor, yet Haskell wipes it off of his upper cheek, which is several inches above Rain's mouth to begin with.
So yeah, so obviously, she spits to the floor, and it ends up on this dude's face, or at least he wipes it off like it hits hits his face, but it clearly hits the ground. So this, once again, I guess was also a continuity issue, but at the same time, maybe they didn't want to the dude didn't want to be spit on for the scene and was just funny about it and just didn't want to do it. I mean, me personally, if I'm in a movie, if you're getting paid like they're getting paid, fucking, I don't care. I don't mind somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like, if it's for a film, it's acting, whatever.
Maybe he was wiping off like a little flyaway droplet that just...
Yeah, a little lonely droplet. But yeah, so that was pretty interesting. In the first 3 minutes of the movie, Rajkin, this fucking guy, is sprayed with water from head to toe, soaking his clothing. In the very next scene, his clothing is bone dry, yet his skin is still dripping water.
Maybe he's sweating.
Profusely, like a motherfucker. Like he's on Molly. No, he's fucking dipping. But he's on that dip. But yeah, so basically, once again, another continuity issue here where a dude gets sprayed down and the next scene his clothes are fucking completely dry, even though he's dripping water, which makes no fucking sense. If it was logically, if that was the case where he was sprayed down and didn't put clothes on after, which it seems like because of the clothes being dry. So something they fucked up in continuity, maybe it was cold, I don't know. But there was some reason that they had to do that, and obviously,
Or maybe it was hot and he was sweating, like I said.
It's smelling like rank shit.
Ew.
Straight shiitake meat mushrooms.
When Wynn says he can help the team avoid the traps of the cube, Rains pushes him back into the wall. On impact, you can see the supposedly metal wall behind him move.
Damn it. So the second time in the franchise we've noticed that this fucking cube is made out of plastic and fucking wood. Son of a whore bitch.
He got you.
Yeah, so this isn't a continuity thing. This is once again like a set flaw, you know what I mean? Something that they just had an oversight of that managed to get into the movie that they just either didn't notice, or even maybe they noticed and thought it was so small that most people wouldn't pick up on it and just didn't care. That happens sometimes because of restraints, budget restraints, time restraints. Films are very fickle and funny, so it's not surprising that things like this happen, but a lot of continuity issues, it seems like, and not even just continuity issues, but filming errors in Cube Zero for sure. But I did like this one, and it is a little bit different than the other ones in the fact that you do get a little bit more backstory in it, and they do give a lot more, insight to the people that are running the cube and kind of see who they are. But this one is a lot different from the other two, I would say, just because a lot of it takes place outside of the place where the film typically takes place, which is inside the cube. A lot of it takes place outside of that, and you get to see the characters behind the cube. So that was pretty cool to me.
Quote unquote, the people upstairs. That's like the next level up, but then they mention that there's more people upstairs. So
Yeah, so there's multiple levels and different organizations and likely governments involved in the running of this cube. Very interesting indeed, and that's all kind of revealed in Cube Zero. So that's pretty much the facts that we have here for Cube Zero. Let's talk a little bit about this film before we get into a wrap-up of this trilogy. So this one here, like we mentioned, is the prequel to the first two films. It takes place before Cube. And it also, like I said, gives the most information that's vital to knowing the origins of the Cube itself. However, there's nothing really set in stone in this one either. It kind of keeps you guessing once again on who's actually behind this and running it. And even though they show you faces, they don't really give you specifics, and you don't know where it's at and the reasoning behind the construction. And there's just there's a lot of vague things behind it. They really, through this whole trilogy, they never really explain that, so they leave it wide-ended and wide opened here. But I do like Cube Zero. I thought it was a good entry. I would say that the effects in this one are a little bit better than Cube 2, Hypercube. I do think that it's a little bit more of a serious tone than the second one. I think the second was a little bit more far-fetched. I think director Sakula took it a little bit more that way. I think Barbarash went back to Natali's original direction with the first Cube of keeping it more poignant and more, tentatively more visceral, more violent and more dark. It's a little bit more evil feeling than the first one. Than the second one is. It kind of goes back to the roots of the original. Hypercube's a little bit more lighter on its feet. In my opinion, it has a little bit more comedic elements tossed in. This one's a little bit more of a serious tone, and I do like that. I do think that this one is a solid entry. It's probably out of my, this one and the second one are really tied for me almost. I would probably slightly edge the second one, just because I kind of like the fact that they stayed in the cube. Because even though, like I mentioned earlier, I like to know more about what's going on in the cube, like outside of the cube and why it's there. You don't necessarily get that in 3, even though you do. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of tell you why and how and all that, but they don't really give you what I was hoping for with it. So, 0 and 2 for me are definitely under 1, but I would slightly edge it to 2 probably, just because I like the cast a little bit better, and I think the kills were a little bit more violent, even though it had the more comedic elements to it. Not even necessarily more violent, but cooler. I enjoyed the kills a little bit more in the second one. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on Cube Zero. If I'm going to throw a rating on that one out of 10, I'm going to go ahead and give that one a solid... I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. 6.25 to 6.5 out of 10. I do think it was better as far as the filmmaking sense probably than 2. But I didn't enjoy it personally as much as I enjoyed 2. But I do think it's a great origin film. I think it does kind of give a little bit of backstory to the cube and does give you a little bit of flavor with where it came from, but not enough for my liking. So yeah, I'm going to rock with a 6.25 to 6.5 on that one.
I'd probably give it a 7. Like you said, it's nice to know the backstory. It's nice to know where it came from. You did get a little more information, as we mentioned before, but there's nothing really set. You don't really know where it is, how it got there, but they pick at you a little bit. They tease you. So definitely a 7. It's better than the second one, I believe, but that's just me.
Yeah, so I think we're in agreement on that. So that wraps up our rating for Cube Zero, and that also wraps up our thoughts on the trilogy of these films. This was a fun one to go through. I really did enjoy overall checking these out, and they were a lot of fun to watch. I am interested to check out a sequel or a remake if they do it. I will keep my eyes peeled for that in the future. But we have a lot more to talk about. In the meantime, don't go nowhere, guys, because this is not the end of the show. This may be the end of the segment, but we have a lot more coming up for you. So don't go nowhere. Go ahead and get yourself another snack, a bathroom break if you need it, smoke break, whatever you need to do. Take care of that. Come right back. We'll be back after a message from these sponsors. He's a 7-foot-tall assortment of 7 parts. I think it'll be easy to spot.
Fireball!
He's one funky motherfunker.
There's a madman out there, Sheriff. You know no one is safe.
He used to hate fire. Now he can't get enough Disco Inferno. Dancing its way into theaters this fall. 7 Feet of Funk. Dr. Funkenstein.
Funkenstein.
What's new for you to view? Find out this week on Netflix Best Picks.
Alright, so we are back with Netflix Best Picks, of course, and this week's pick is going to be Patchwork from 2015, directed by Tyler McIntyre. Now, this one was a whole lot of fun. I don't want to spoil too much on this for anybody that hasn't seen it yet, so I'm not going to give away too many details, but holy fuck.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I love the odes in there to Reanimator and other films, so I'm not going to give away any plots in here, but there's a lot of Reanimator odes in this throughout. The cat, the green liquid, the concept, just a ton of different things in there. The head, the end with the owl.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things in there that definitely scream Reanimator, and I thought that was great. I really liked this one. I thought it was fun. It's a newer one from 2015, and I just hit Netflix not that long ago, in my queue at least. And I'm glad that I watched this one. This is one that was highly recommended by a lot of different friends of mine, so I checked it out. And it did not disappoint. I like this one. I thought it had a good story. It's fun. It's brutal. At first, you're kind of like, well, why the fuck is, everybody getting, dominated in this like this? Why is it, going down like this? Blah, blah, blah. Everything gets explained in a way that is gratifying. It's one of the movies where at first you kind of are a little hesitant on the main character. For me, at least, I was a little hesitant.
Yeah.
And it definitely gets spun around by the end of the movie. But, man, this one was a lot of fun. Really, really enjoyable.
Yeah. I've never seen a movie like it, honestly. Like, it definitely had me on the edge of my seat, without giving too much away. There's some hateable characters, there's lovable characters, and then they switch. Like, that lovable character would become a hateful character, and
it definitely does that. And like I said, I actually ended up liking a lot the main scientist at the end and the beginning of the flick, who really gets his shine more so at the end of the flick. But I actually liked that character, and I liked his humor throughout, and I thought it was great. But yeah, that is our Netflix best pick for the week, is Patchwork.
If you have not seen it, check it.
Yeah, by director Tyler McIntyre, dropped in 2015. Make sure to check that one out. It is in your Netflix right now, so cue that shit up, check it out, let us know what you think in the group. Speaking of which, quick little segue and shameless plug. If you have not joined our group and you're listening to this cast on YouTube, make sure you head over to the Horror Headquarters. Is what it is called on Facebook. Although the show is Horror Headquarters, we couldn't pick that because of some fucking bullshit. But if you look up the Horror Headquarters on Facebook, you will find us. There's roughly 4,000 members in the group, and it'll have our current show for the header, so you'll know if you find the right one, if you find that one. And hopefully we'll be bigger than 4,000 fans on the page by the time you hear this, if you hear this down the road. So that 4,000 applies for right now, which is currently middle of November 2017. I don't even know the day. It's the 13th. That's right.
Yep.
13th. November 13th, 2017. 11:40 p.m. to be super specific and precise.
It would drop on the 14th, so.
Yes, it'll drop on the 14th, but we're recording a day early because we can't do that shit the day of, because there's so much fucking shit with editing and recording and fucking all that other shit that we have to do to this hour-and-a-half montage of talking that, takes time. So we need a night to get it together for y'all.
Hashtag behind the scenes.
Exactly. So yeah, make sure you guys check that one out. That is our Netflix best pick, is Patchwork. We have more coming for you, so don't go nowhere. We'll be back in just a momente.
This one, that one, this one, that one, this or that, or 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 this. Gotta pick this one, I like that one, gotta pick one.
Pick your poison.
It's your pick your poison, people.
Boom!
Alright, so this week, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre original, made in 1974, directed by Tobe Hooper, versus the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, made in 2003, directed by Marcus Nispel.
That's right. So this is an original versus a remake classic film of Texas Chainsaw Massacre versus the remake that is Loved and hated by many. This one for me is very interesting because I do enjoy both of these films. I am a huge fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise as a whole. I am one of the few people that genuinely likes pretty much every entry into the series. And you know what? I used to really hate on 3D. I don't hate 3D as much anymore, and I kind of, like, the only thing I really just didn't like so much was the intro. I feel some of the dialogue in the intro was a little rough, which sucks because Bill Moseley is in that film and plays that role, and that's the dialogue that I think is a little shoddy, and I don't think it's his delivery. I think it's just the writing for the scene just doesn't fit real well for me. It just doesn't feel too natural. But I do think that both of these films are phenomenal, and I do like the remake. I am a fan of the remake. I'm not one of those people that hates on it. I do think it was very well done. I think they really captured the essence, and they made it terrifying, and they kept the creepiness there. I do feel, though, that the original was more experimental and much creepier, and like the fact that there's no music in the original, more so as vibes and sound effects and ambience. And that goes a long way in a horror film in creating that type of horrifying vibe. And I think they capture that phenomenally in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But the remake also has a more updated feel to it and is very brutal. I mean, super brutal, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, the Sheriff Hoyt, is a son of a bitch. I mean, he is just unrelenting. And, the family is just really twisted. And I like that you see that and, they stick to that. And just, one of the scenes that sticks out to me, and one of my favorite scenes in that movie is, the scene when he's like, he's in the wheelchair and he comes up to he sees that the girl and the boy are together, like, Beale runs into the house, and the dude's like, "What are you doing in my house?" That line to me, and I'll be honest, like, it chills me, like, because I remember when the movie came out, and I remember seeing that trailer and that being super terrifying to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, the idea of somebody, like, catching your ass in their fucking house like that, like, that is gotta be a traumatizing moment, you know what I mean? Like, you're fucking, especially, it wasn't even like a militia, it wasn't there like they were there to rob, it was like, they're there to get their friends out of a house where they know something bad is happening, and this guy obviously fucking knows the deal with the way that his tone was and how he portrayed himself, so... the remake is phenomenal. The original is phenomenal. This is such a hard one for me. I mean, I really honestly cannot buckle down and say one or the other. If I'm being forced to choose, I'm gonna have to go with the original. And it's not even necessarily because I think it's so much superior in its fashion of being done and directed and filmed. I think that the remake is probably better filmed, more cinematically, but the original captures an essence, a vibe, and an atmosphere that is unparalleled and cannot be matched. And the lack of the soundtrack adds a much creepier vibe, and the actors are unforgettable and have a much more unique approach because they're basing this off of, something that wasn't visual ever. The people that did the remake, that were behind the remake, they already had something visual to base their film off of. Yeah. So the creativity levels there were more limited, in my opinion, versus creating what Hooper created with the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, with that being said, if I'm going to have to pick one, I'm going with the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, simply on that merit. What do you think about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre original and remake?
Oh my goodness. Like, this was my first time visiting the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Hate me. I don't care. I'm a late bloomer. But yeah, so seeing these films for the first time, it wowed me. Because I hear so many bad things, well, not bad things, but like crazy things about Leatherface, and it's like, who's Leatherface? And then you don't really know who he is until you watch the movie. So there was that. My favorite one out of the franchise, though, I have to say, is 4. But if I had to choose, out of these two, the original is always better than the remake in a way, simply because it is like genuine. Like it's the first like it's the origin basically, kind of, until they do an origin story. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, the original, sets the tone and basically lays the foundation for a film.
Exactly.
But the fact that it brings that originality, you know what I mean? That's the thing for me, is that a remake, you're only bringing a limited amount to the plate because it is a remake. It's a rendition of something that has already been done and executed. So you're not exactly getting
the full story.
Well, an original story, you know what I mean? You're getting a retelling of something that's already been out there. So you're not getting a full version of you're not getting an original version of the story per se.
Yeah.
You're getting a retelling of it. So I'm not huge into remakes, but I will say one thing you mentioned about most of the time remakes not being better. I disagree slightly because, well, not even necessarily disagree. You're right in the fact that most of the time the remakes aren't better, but I will say there's been, in the last decade or two, there's been a few exceptional remakes that come out, and I'll note a few of those with Hills Have Eyes remake, Maniac remake, and the Friday the 13th remake, and as well as the Texas Chainsaw remake. I thought all four of those were very well done and enjoy all four of those thoroughly. Now, that's another whole can of worms. I know there's a lot of people that will say that all those films fucking suck and they hate them and they think they're garbage, whatever. But I think they're very well done remakes, and I think that remakes can be well done. It just depends on who is helming it and who's behind it. And between these two films, it looks like we both agree that the original takes the cake.
Mm-hmm.
So our Pick Your Poison official pick is going to be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre OG from '74, directed by Tobe Hooper, coming in victorious over the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003, directed by Marcus Nispel. Good Lord, that was tough to get out. But that wraps up our Pick Your Poison segment of the show. We're going to keep it moving. We still have a few more segments, so don't go nowhere, kiddies. We have lots more trick-or-treats coming your way.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The bodies are starting to add up. Body count reviews.
We are back with another segment. This is the Body Count Reviews. And we're going to go ahead and get into it. We have 7 delightful, frightful films here for you. We're going to get into the first one here, which is Anatomy from 2000, directed by Stefan Rozowitzki. That is a crazy fucking name.
He had to get all fancy.
Rozowitzki. But Anatomy is a very cool flick. There is a sequel to this. I do not own or have not seen the sequel, but I've owned this one for a long time, but we recently dug into it together for the first time. And what a treat. This one was actually really cool. I enjoyed this film. I really thought it was a cool premise. Basically, you have this med student that is working at this, morgue hospital type, university, slash, it's like a multitude of facilities, it seems like, this place that they're working at. But she's working there and finds out that essentially they're doing all types of fucking crazy, fucked up experiments, and there's kind of like this cult of doctors, basically, that, surgeons that are behind all the killings and the mayhem that goes on at this place. So it's an interesting story, really cool, plot to it. I thought it was a fun one. I do want to see the sequel. They definitely leave the first one off with room for the sequel. There's no doubt about it. The way they ended is definitely leaving it open for a second one. But this was a cool one. I really did enjoy Anatomy. If I was going to throw a rating on this one, 1 through 10, I'd go ahead and give this one probably a solid 6.75 out of 10 to maybe a 7. It was very well done, solid flick, pretty memorable, interesting, interesting cast, and just a really, really dope flick. I enjoyed this one, so yeah, I'm gonna roll with that for Anatomy. What do you got on this one?
I'd probably give it a 7. I definitely like where the story took it. You didn't know it's basically unexpected. I like things that are unexpected, really. And to find out that people you work with or people you attend school with and see every day could be behind something so evil. It really is shocking. Moving on to the next movie, American Crime, released in 2004 and directed by Dan Mintz. This is basically a private investigator with his own TV show who has secrets. He doesn't want the secrets to get out, really. He does basically anything he can to protect the secrets. And, you know, when they do get out, there is trouble, obviously.
And his secret happens to be that he's a fucking maniac, psychopath, serial killing fuck. So, you know, this one was a really cool one. I like this one, and it is another one that I had for a long time that I didn't check out until recently. You got Carrie Ells in here, famous from the Saw films and Princess Bride and a bunch of other flicks, you know, throughout the, you know, history. But what a really cool film and cool concept with this one. I enjoyed it. I really thought it was grimy and a really cool one, and the twist was pretty fun. It wasn't something that was too crazy out of the blue or, you know, something that I've never seen before, but it was enjoyable to say the least, and I did enjoy this one. If I was going to throw a rating on this one, I would give this a solid 6.5 to 6.75. I think it's good. I don't think it's great. I think it's definitely worth a watch. Maybe not worth a buy. I do own it just because I'm a completionist and I'll buy any horror film I can get my hands on pretty much. But, yeah, I did like this one. So, yeah, American Crime, definitely a cool one for me. What do you got as a rating on this one?
I'd give it a 6. There are definitely some comedy bits in there. You can tell it's really corny. There's cheesy lines. So
yeah, there's definitely a few corny moments for sure. Speaking of corn, let's move on to Eight-Legged Freaks from 2002, directed by Ellery Elkiam? That is a fucked up last name. Ellery Elkiam. That is a really fucked up name with the alliteration, too. That makes it even worse. Eight-Legged Freaks by Elroy Elkiam. That makes it even more fucky. Holy shit. Okay, so Eight-Legged Freaks from 2002. This one has David Arquette, and this one is really cool. I actually like this one a lot. I love movies with giant bugs, giant monsters, things of that nature. So this one is really fun. This is basically arachnophobia on steroids, is essentially what this is. They just amp up the size of the monsters as the movie progresses along, and eventually you're facing a fucking monster, you know, spider the size of a warehouse by the end of the movie. So,
hi there.
Hi there. Hello, Tamas. But, you know, I think it's a really cool flick and a really fun one. This is definitely a goofy kind of horror film, but it's fun, you know what I mean? Arachnophobia was kind of goofy too, if you recall, from back in the day, so it kind of pays homage to that, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, and definitely a fun watch for sure. As far as the quality of the film and rating this one for Eight-Legged Freaks, I'm going to go ahead and say this one is probably going to get a whopping 5 to 5.5, just because realistically it's not a great film. The quality isn't the best as far as the CGI, and the storyline isn't the most original, but it's fun and I liked it, so I'm not basing that on whether I liked it or not. I'm basing it on straight up the quality of the film itself, the acting and whatnot. So that is my thoughts on Eight-Legged Freaks. What is your thoughts on that film, and what is your rating on it as well?
There's definitely some cheese in this film.
All kinds. I mean, packed.
I feel like these are one of the films that would be aired on Sci-Fi. Like, you know how Sci-Fi movies have, like, the really cheesiness and low budget? 100%.
So,
I like it because it's a Sci-Fi, like, classification, but honestly, it would definitely be a 5 if I had to rate it, really. So.
Yeah, so if you're, you know, like I said, we're trying to be honest with these reviews and not necessarily rated on whether we like it or not, but more so on, you know, I'll tell you if I like a film or not, but I'm not rating I'm not putting my ratings based on whether I like it. I'm putting my ratings based on what I think the quality of the film itself overall is, based on the acting, the soundtrack, the lighting, cinematography, setting, plot, story, all that type of shit. So those are the things I'm taking into accountability, direction, all that. Not necessarily whether I liked it or what I thought was great about it. I can talk about that without throwing that into my rating and without having my thoughts of it influence my rating. So that's what I do. So that is our thoughts on Eight-Legged Freaks. We're going to keep it rolling into the next film.
Frankenstein, a 1931, directed by James Whale.
That is awesome. So we watched the OG Frankenstein, and this is the first time in my life that I've seen it in its entirety. I've only caught parts of it on TV when I was a kid back in the day. So this is the first time I sat down from start to finish and watched the whole thing. And it is short. To note, it's only about 70 minutes, I think. It was like an hour and 10 minutes, so. Remember? It's not even an hour and a half long, so it's a really short horror film. Black and white, and, you know, even for its age, it's just so well done. I mean, there's not a ton of dialogue in it, honestly, and, you know, it's a very somber kind of film and very kind of uneventful, but I think that the limited dialogue in it and the lack of lines from the monster and the use of emotions from Karloff, I think, really signifies that film as being a true classic and, you know, really making it a legendary staple in the horror film community. You know, Frankenstein is, you know, always viewed as one of the first monsters you think of when you think of the horror genre. Everybody thinks of Frankenstein. I mean, he is the epitome of the horror genre. You know, he is the original monster. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Frankenstein, you know, for me holds a dear, you know, very dear spot in my heart, and I am glad that I was able to sit down and revisit this black and white classic and check it out. But really fun, you know, really fun film to check out and watch around Halloween time, because it pays, you know, homage to that type of era and that feeling and that spirit. So the OG Frankenstein was just great in my eyes. What is your thoughts on that one?
Honestly, this was my first time watching it. So, and like, it's good to see the actual origin instead of seeing spin-off and parody movies and this and that and one another and whatnot. And it's like, oh, so that's where he came from, that's what he is, instead of seeing some like
Van Helsing or Monster Squad or some other film that, you know, because she saw Monster Squad. I put her onto Monster Squad and showed her that before she saw this. So the scene where Frankenstein talks to the little girl in Monster Squad, remember I pointed that out to you when we watched the original Frankenstein, that scene.
Yep.
Although it's a little different because he throws the girl in the river in the original, and it's a little more brutal. In Monster Squad, he doesn't do that. He ends up being friendly and talking to the girl. So that was very cool. Now, for ratings on this one, though, I'm going to go ahead and give this a solid 8.75 out of 10. Now, my reason for this going so high is because I'm keeping in mind the fact that the time, the era, the quality of resources and filming quality available to them was much more limited, right, than what it is now. And the tools and the knowledge of filmmaking was much more limited at that period. So you have to keep that in mind and account that when, you know, rating a film. It's different when you're doing something from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, because that's somewhat relevantly recent. But something from 31, I mean, that's coming in on, you know, 70, 80 years old. So things that are of that context, that are that old, definitely need to be looked at in a different light, without a doubt. So Frankenstein for me is a absolute fucking classic, and I really enjoyed watching it. And that's what I threw my rating on it. What about you? What's your rating on Frankenstein?
Oh, I'd have to give it a 6 or a 7, because, you know, Frankenstein is like one of the OG. When someone says Halloween, it's Dracula and Frankenstein and a witch, and like he's like the mascot of like all things horror. And, you know, it's like I said, it's good to see an origin story and whatnot instead of seeing all types of bullshit.
Yeah, a lot of spin-offs and things like that. And I get why you wouldn't probably go with like, but I went with an 8.75. I'm up there close to a 9, and like I said, that's because of the time. But it's not for everybody. You know what I mean? It's definitely not the type of horror film that is going to appeal to everybody. It might appeal more to me than you because of me having a history with Frankenstein the monster. I've always been a huge fan of the Frankenstein monster, so I have a little bit of a I guess a little bit of a bias towards that character. But yeah, the Frankenstein movies are just, really fun. There's quite a few of them, and I'm trying to barrel through them. There's Son of Frankenstein and Bride and a few others, House of Frankenstein. So all together, they're just really fun, and I'm really trying to dig through all those. The next one we're going to go ahead and get in here too is one of my favorites, and this one is just phenomenal. This is Happy Birthday to Me from 1981, directed by J. Lee Thompson, which I'm not sure if Thompson did any more horror films after this. I'm not real familiar with the director's name, but this one, holy fuck, how many twists was there in this one? I mean, this film just delivers repeatedly with twist after twist after twist, and I think that's great. I think that it makes it stand out. I like that. I really did like the repeated twist in it. And it's funny because I'd seen this one already when we watched it together recently. I'd already seen this one, and it's always been one of my favorites. But I didn't remember all the fucking twists at the end. Like,
I feel like the twists are more like distractions. Like, they'll distract you from, like, the actual twist that's coming. And then they're like, oh, nope, look over here.
Yeah, it's definitely that sleight of hand disillusion of, look at this, pay attention to this, and then bam, hit you with another blindsided hit. Boom. And yeah, and that's the thing, like that film does a great job of doing that, and it's constant throughout, and I like that. I like those types of twists in a film, and I think that when you can achieve that and make a cohesive film still stick together and throw those twists out there that pull the audience a certain way, and then still be able to divert it back and give a better reason or an actual explanation of bam, what happened or why it happened, that's always great in my eyes. And Happy Birthday to Me definitely delivers on those axles and sends that out on all cylinders. For me, if I'm gonna rate this one, I'm gonna go ahead and give a strong I'm going to give a strong 8.5 to this one, because I think that the combination of the twist and the actual end scene and the theme music to it and the actual final twist is just brilliant. And I really do like this one. It's always been one of my favorite 80s slashers. It's one that I grew up on. It's one that I've had in my collection for quite a while, and am glad that I do have it. But yeah, Happy Birthday to Me is definitely a solid one, and I'm giving it that strong rating. What do you got on this one?
I would have to give it a 7. The twists and turns are really mind-boggling. Like he said, hey, look over here. No, it's over here. More like distractions than twists. So
yeah, great misdirection.
Yeah, so the next movie we talk about is The Fog from 1980, directed by John Carpenter.
The legendary John Carpenter.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right.
It was my first time visiting this. Well, seeing it, not visiting, but whatever. And Adrienne Barbeau.
Yep.
Once again, fantastic performance. That voice, like, I remember her doing it on Tales of Halloween, because she was a radio producer in there. Yep. So that voice was like, hey, welcome back. Nice to see you again.
I never even thought about that. Now, I know that she was in that. That's a really cool segue. Now, I knew that she was in that movie, but I never thought about
comparing it.
Yeah, that's probably the director of Tales from Halloween, Tales from Halloween. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Tales of Halloween or Tales from Halloween. But I know that the film you're referring to, but I'm pretty sure the director, obviously, when he, put Barbeau in that character, he must have, wanted that homage to The Fog being in there. I never even thought about that, though. That's actually really fucking cool.
She just has that natural voice, that, like, the soothing, like, smooth jazz, like, hey there.
KAB.
Yeah, so.
San Antonio Bay. But yeah, The Fog is awesome, and that's definitely one of the ones that I like too. It's one of my favorites. I'm lucky enough to actually have a double signed version of it. I have a signature from Tom Atkins and from Charles Cyphers as well on there. So got to meet both of them guys. Super nice. Got to meet them both at a con, and that was just legendary. But yeah, The Fog from 1980, directed by Carpenter. This is one of my favorites, and it's also super atmospheric and one of my favorite Carpenter films, period. Yeah, The Fog is a great film. It did spawn a remake. I'm not super fond on the remake. It's okay. But the original is an absolute classic. And for a rating on this one, man, fuck. This one I've got to give a great rating to because there's so many things about it I like. I'm going to give it a strong 8.75 to this one. I think the atmosphere, the acting, the casting with Holbrook, with Barbeau, with Atkins, it's just fucking so well done. It's a really well rounded out cast, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did think that it was a gem of a film, and I was glad that we sat down and checked this one out, and I was glad to be able to turn you on to it.
If I had to give this a rating, I'd have to give it an 8. Like I said, Adrienne Barbeau really pulled me in with the smooth jazz, whole voice radio talk show host thing. And like I said, I enjoyed her in Tales of Halloween because she was a radio show talk host in that movie too. So.
Yep. So yeah, it's like a reprisal of the role, kind of like a flashback to it almost.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So moving on to the last movie we have here for the body count reviews this week. It is Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, directed by the legendary Francis Ford Coppola, however you want to pronounce it. So this one is one that I'd seen parts of, but never in its entirety. I had it on Blu-ray for a long time, but never got to check it out. I've seen so many times different parts of this one, but never had a chance to sit down and watch the entirety front to back. First time sit down for me to be able to finally do that. Same for her, first time view for her. Mm-hmm. And I think we both enjoyed this one. I know me personally, I thought it was great. I actually did enjoy Keanu Reeves' performance. Gary Oldman is obviously amazing in it as Dracula, aka Vlad the Impaler. I just love the look of it. I love the look of the suit and the fucking vampires and the necrogenic green mist and the prison that they hold him in, and just there's so many cool looks to it. The castle itself, the way his shadows move. I mean, there's so many cool things in this movie. And Coppola doing a horror film like this, I thought was brilliant. So having him helming a vampire film was just super amazing. Really a big fan of this one. Really love it. It is a phenomenal film. And very well done. If I was going to throw a rating on this one, for me personally, I'm going to roll with an 8.75 to a possible 9. I think this is almost as high as you can get as far as writing and filming of a horror movie. It is definitely the pinnacle of that. Phenomenal acting, great casting, great music, epic film. I mean, it's about 2.5 hour film if I recall correctly, and it is, worth every moment of sitting down and watching it. It is definitely a raw film to check out, and a real gem of the horror genre indeed. What is your thoughts and rating on this one?
My thoughts. It's good to see many faces of Dracula. I've seen him from something on Sesame Street, like Count Dracula, and then
the Count.
Something from drawn in a cartoon. I've seen him transform into a bat, and this is the version that I've never seen, never heard of. Version. Yeah, it'd be real. It's hey, there's a side to me that you need to know about.
Yeah, you're getting the human. You're getting the human background of Vlad the Impaler, who
exactly.
is the famously known as to be the actual original Dracula himself. So, that is very cool in itself that you're getting that. But what about your rating on this one?
My rating, out of everything and all the different stories I've seen and heard about Dracula, I'd have to give this one a strong 8. because this one was the best, and like it's like the best story I've heard, best story I've seen.
Yeah, it's very well written, and like I mentioned, with Coppola being behind this, you kind of expect that with his extensive body of work, his great directing prowess. You kind of expect there to be something of quality behind it, and he absolutely delivers. So Bram Stoker's Dracula is a great film, and that's both, definitely a thumbs up from both of us for that one, so definitely check that out. But that wraps up our body count reviews for this week. We still have our poll of the week coming up in just a second, so don't go nowhere. Get yourself some nachos, the nachios,
and
the wet nats, the nachios, Doritos, and the Cheetos, Rick Ross, double Dorito back.
Anyway, just hurry up and get your snacks and bring your ass right back, because we got the poll of the week.
Ham bacon.
Let's get it.
Ham bacon, double chicken, chili,
Shut up.
meatloaf. Roast bacon fat.
Wake up, kiddies. There's no time to sleep.
It's time for the poll of the week.
Alright, so it's your poll of the week. We're going to start off with last week's poll, which was from episode 2, the Creep Show Trilogy. What era had the best horror films? There were 0 votes for 1960 through 1979. You guys are haters. But 28 votes for 1980 through 1999.
So obviously we got a lot of 1980 slasher lovers out there, I'm sure, in the group.
Yeah.
So that's for me also. I voted as well for 1980 to 99. That's where my vote lied.
Yeah, same. So I'm a hypocrite.
There's some good, there is some great films from 60 to 79, but man, from 80 to 99, there's just so many fucking classics. So you got to definitely say that the 80s was the golden era for sure for horror. So 80 to 99 was the big victor in that one.
Woo!
That's right.
Alright, so this week's poll of the week: where's or how do you watch your horror films the most? Okay. A, theaters. B, DVD/Blu-ray/VHS. Like old people. C, Netflix. D, Hulu. E, Screambox, which is shit.
Yes.
F is Shudder.
So theaters, DVD, Blu-ray, VHS, Netflix, Hulu, Screambox, or Shudder. All valid options, but yes, I feel your pain on Screambox. We have a subscription to Screambox, and for some reason, it does not like to let us watch movies. We paid for a year.
We were kind of forced to pay, though. They kind of like...
We're not refunding the money, so we had a forced year, and it doesn't even work. So it's a fucking loss on a loss on loss on loss. But
fail on fail on fail.
Fail on fail on fail on fail action. So that is unfortunate. But that is the poll of the week question. So make sure you guys get them votes in. Drop them in our Facebook group, which you can find us at the Horror Headquarters on Facebook. You will see the group where all kinds of fancy, frightful, fucking fearful, fucking farfanugan.
What the hell is a farfanugan?
A farfanugan is a word that I just hit you with that you're going to acknowledge and take and deal with.
Anyway, you do your part and we'll do ours. Remember to vote.
That's right. We'll keep bringing you that horror content. You drop your votes and give us that receptacle of interaction back to keep things running smoothly. That about wraps up our poll of the week, though, so we're going to go ahead and get into our final segment of the night. This is our final chapter. So, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We thank you for tuning in and listening to our thoughts on the Cube Trilogy. We had a great time sitting back and giving you our thoughts on this fun trilogy of films. We will be back next week, next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You know the dealio.
Make sure you leave your feedback below or wherever you're commenting and seeing this and whatever. Hopefully YouTube, so... yeah.
YouTube, Facebook, wherever. Wetnat, wherever you find
Wetnat.
us and see us. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, follow what we're doing, join our Facebook group, get in on our discussions. And, yeah, we appreciate your time for checking us out, sitting back and listening to the cast. Like I said, we will be back next week with another topic. We're not going to reveal it yet. Follow the group. You'll know in advance before everyone else does when the next episode drops. We will see you guys next time. We are just dying to talk horror.
Wow.
Wow.